The golden lights of the palace glittered like stars captured on earth, bathing every corner in an opulence that tasted of ancient power and modern excess. At the heart of this empire, the billionaire sheikh sat silently in his vast chamber, eyes cold and sharp, a ruler whose word was law, whose presence commanded oceans of wealth and desert sands alike. Yet beneath the flawless surface, boredom simmered, a hunger not even his riches could satisfy. Tonight, the silence was pierced by a sound unexpected, a melody of voices weaving seamlessly through 9 different languages. From the shadowed gallery, the sheikh's gaze fixed on the maid. She moved with quiet assurance, her voice calm yet vibrant. She spoke languages as if they were threads in a richly embroidered tapestry. Arabic, French, Mandarin, Russian, and more. Each word a brushstroke painting a brilliance, unfamiliar in his world of gilded isolation. This revelation struck him like a desert storm. How could this humble woman, bound by the limits of servitude, possess such an extraordinary gift? Skepticism warred with fascination, his pride sharpening into curiosity. Was she hiding a past more complex than the silks that draped her modest frame? Behind a carefully maintained mask of imperious detachment, his heart hammered with reluctant intrigue. The grandeur around him, the scent of oud and spices hanging heavy in the cool air, the burnished surfaces reflecting shimmering jewels, felt suddenly hollow compared to the enigma standing within his walls. The maid caught his lingering stare. Her eyes, steady and unreadable, held a flicker of challenge beneath a veil of cautious pride. She did not bow in submission, but met his look with equal measure, a quiet defiance that stirred something primal in the sheikh's guarded soul. Around them, the vastness of the desert seemed to pulse with unspoken tension, as if the dunes themselves awaited the unfolding of a secret power. Their brief exchanges became a silent dance, he probing with veiled questions, she deflecting with measured poise. Each word passed between them crackled with the weight of worlds neither had dared to enter. The gulf of their stations was immense, yet the shared thread of intellect and unyielding spirit began to blur the boundaries in the most imperceptible of ways. Then, in a moment shrouded by the whispering wind and the distant call of night creatures, the sheikh stumbled upon proof that shattered his assumptions. Hidden among her belongings, a delicate pendant engraved with an insignia that spoke of forgotten nobility and a lost legacy intertwined with the secrets of the languages she commanded. A thunderous realization roared in his chest. This was no ordinary maid. The woman who had been merely a curiosity was a puzzle piece of a labyrinth he had never expected to navigate, a revelation capable of toppling the pillars of his inscrutable dominion. Before the next secret of this vast empire unfolds, make sure you're already part of our caravan of stories. Many destinies are yet to be written, and I don't want you to miss a single moment. Leave a like if the heart of this billionaire sheikh has already captured your curiosity. Tell me in the comments, from which city are you following this saga, and what twist do you? The grand papacy of Paul Biri's silence shattered the moment the billionaire sheikh's fingers brushed the delicate pendant hidden beneath the maid's sleeve. His gaze, sharp as the desert's edge, lingered on the glimmering emblem, a symbol he recognized instantly. A forgotten crest, whispered only in forbidden histories, linking her to a lineage exiled from his realm's consciousness. His breath caught, the room's opulence fading to insignificance against the storm unfolding within. The air thickened, tinged with the scent of oud and unspoken truths. For the first time, the certainty of his absolute control seemed fragile, a mirage dissolving beneath the weight of this revelation. "I must know," he said, his voice low and commanding, yet threaded with reluctant intrigue. The maid's eyes met his without flinching, holding a quiet defiance that sent a shiver through his calculated calm. "My past is not yours to uncover," she replied, steady but guarded. Her voice trembled only when she spoke of loyalty, an allegiance woven from scars and silence. He rose, his towering figure casting a shadow that swallowed hers in the dim light. The balance of power shifted imperceptibly, the gulf between master and servant narrowing for the first time. "Why conceal who you truly are?" he demanded, stepping closer, the heat of the desert night pressed against his skin, despite the coolness within the chamber. "Because," she whispered, "some truths could destroy us both." Their conversation became a fragile dance, words laced with the tension of withheld secrets and the magnetic pull of a destiny neither dared to speak aloud. Every glance was a battle and a truce, every pause pregnant with questions too dangerous to voice. The Sheikh's mind raced back to the histories he had buried beneath layers of gold and conquest. A noble house stripped of honor, cast into obscurity by a betrayal that had reshaped alliances. Could fate have tangled their paths in a cruel design? "The insignia," he murmured. "It ties you to the house of Al-Zahra, the family my dynasty condemned." Her gaze flickered, shadows crossing her face. "That past is a wound I hide behind this humble guise." A bitter irony twisted in his chest. The very empire he ruled bore the scars of that ancient decree. And now, the living echo stood before him, cloaked in modesty, yet shining with forbidden pride. He paced the chamber, the weight of silk and jewels now a prison rather than a throne. What had been a game of curiosity crawled into something far deeper, a reckoning with ghosts he had ignored for too long. Outside, the desert wind whispered secrets through the ornate windows, as if urging him toward a choice neither loyalty nor power could dictate. "Tell me," he said abruptly, voice rough with unexpected softness, "what do you want?" Her eyes, fierce yet vulnerable, met his. "To live free of the past." "You cannot," he said harshly. "Not here, not now. This palace is a cage woven from gold." A flicker of sadness crossed her features, a glimpse behind the armor of steadiness. "And yet," he continued, "you have brought a storm into my ordered world that no wealth can silence." Their breaths mingled in the charged space between them, the silence heavier than any command. In that moment, the line between captor and captive blurred into obscurity. Suddenly, footsteps echoed from the corridor, sharp and deliberate, cutting through their fragile connection. The Sheikh's head snapped toward the door. The sound was familiar, an emissary from the Council of Elders, come with a warning or perhaps a threat. His eyes darkened. "You should hide," he whispered, a flash of protectiveness breaking through his stoic facade. "No," she answered firmly. "Whatever comes, I will face it, not as your servant, but as who I am." Before he could protest, the heavy doors swung open, and a tall figure entered, cloak sweeping the floor with the chill of distant winters. The emissary's gaze was cold, analytic, yet flickered with hidden knowledge as it met the Sheikh's. "The council knows of the pendant," the emissary said smoothly, voice like polished stone. "They fear it." The air grew colder, the opulence of the room a stark contrast to the icy threat now hanging between them. "The House of Al-Zora is not forgotten," the Sheikh said quietly, a storm rising in his gaze. "And they believe its return means the fall of this dynasty." The maid stood tall, her fingers clenched, defying the weight of a past she longed to bury. Yet now it surged forward like a tide, relentless. The emissary's eyes flicked to her, sharp and appraising. "Your secret is more than a whisper in the halls. It could shatter alliances, ignite old wars." The Sheikh's resolve hardened. He stepped between the emissary and the maid, a shield forged not of steel, but of unspoken promise. "Then we will face this storm together," he declared, voice resolute. "Because if history is to be rewritten, it will be by those brave enough to defy fate." The chamber seemed to contract around them, the gold and jewels reflecting a battle that had transcended time and titles. Between the Sheikh and the woman who dared defy him, a fragile alliance was forged amid the flickering shadows. As the emissary's gaze hardened, the Sheikh's mind danced on the edge of war and revelation. The palace, once a bastion of unquestioned power, now teetered on the brink of upheaval. Outside, the desert night stretched vast and indifferent. But within these walls, the storm had only just begun. And in the deepest silence that followed, the maid's whispered words hovered in the air like a breath held too long. "Not all who bear crowns hold the power to command their own hearts." At that moment, the Sheikh's phone buzzed sharply, breaking the fragile truce. He answered, and the voice on the other end was cold, edged with menace. "Your secret is no longer safe." The room plunged into darkness as the connection cut abruptly, leaving the Sheikh and the woman standing amid the glittering opulence, bound by secrets that threatened to shatter them both. The heavy doors closed behind the emissary, their echo lingering like a sudden thunderclap in the vast chamber. The golden light of the palace seemed to flicker uncertainly, as if even the walls hesitated before the storm about to unravel. The billionaire Sheikh's eyes remained locked on the maid, the woman who was no longer just a servant, but a beacon of secrets that threatened to fracture the foundation of his empire. In her slender fingers, the pendant caught the light again, casting fleeting shadows that danced like furies on the silk-covered walls. "You bear the weight of a legacy that was meant to be buried," he said quietly, voice threaded with a resonance no one in the palace had ever heard. A fragile echo of doubt and reckoning. She held his gaze without lowering her eyes. And yet, it breathes still, even in the silence of exile. The scent of jasmine and oud hung thick, wrapping them in a bubble of tension and unspoken words. The night outside was merciless, the desert winds racing like Wild horses over the dunes, carrying whispers of forgotten battles and promises broken. "The council fears you," he said, pacing now, the smooth floor beneath his steps reflecting the glitter of his jeweled rings. "They fear what your return represents: upheaval, challenge, the undoing of everything." Her lips tightened. "And what do you fear, Sheikh? The reemergence of a truth you sought to erase? Or the loss of the empire you built on it?" For a heartbeat, his mask of impassivity faltered. He stared at her as one might at a flame, drawn irresistibly close, yet wary of the burn. "I fear the destruction of the life I have forged, the loss of control," he admitted, voice low and vulnerable in the cavernous room. Her breath caught, barely perceptible. "Yet you stood between me and the emissary." "Why?" she asked, the challenge laced with something softer now. Curiosity, maybe even a flicker of hope. He stepped closer, closing the gap where secrecy seemed inadequate. "Because," he said, "there is more at stake than politics and power. There is something about you that unsettles the core of this kingdom. And the core of me." Their eyes locked, a silent battle raging beneath the surface. The walls, heavy with gold and history, seemed to lean in, eager witnesses to this fragile confession. A distant sound broke through, a faint murmur carried on the breeze, a reminder that outside this gilded prison, dangers lurked unseen. She took a slow, deliberate breath, gathering all the courage her concealed past had taught her to summon. "There is a price to pay." "For secrets," she whispered, voice trembling on the edge of revelation. "And some debts demand the ultimate sacrifice." The Sheikh's jaw clenched. He moved toward a low, ornate table and poured a measure of dark, spiced tea. The steam curled like smoke on the desert horizon, elusive and transient. He handed her the cup in a gesture of peace, or perhaps surrender. "Speak then," he urged. "Let the truth shatter the silence. Whatever comes, this palace will bear witness." Her fingers closed around the warm cup, and for a moment, the weight of their combined destinies seemed to suspend time. "My family was torn apart to protect a secret, a map, hidden in codes and tongues lost to your court," she confessed. "A map that could reveal treasures, not only of gold, but of power far beyond the coins and jewels you rule." The Sheikh's eyes narrowed, recognizing the magnitude of the implication. The pendant was but the first key. "And the council?" His voice hardened. "They want it destroyed." "Or claimed," she corrected. "Their fear masks a hunger for control." The room darkened as clouds passed before the moonlight. Shadows cloaked the intricate mosaics and velvet drapes, mirroring the doubt that spread within. The Sheikh stepped forward, his presence vast and commanding again. "We face enemies not only in the council," he warned, "but within our own ranks, those who would see this empire fall rather than see a woman rise from exile." She met his gaze, unwavering. "I will not be a pawn in their games," she declared, "nor a secret locked behind these palace walls." A sudden sharp knock at the chamber door snapped the tension taut. Both heads turned instantly, the tranquility shattered. The Sheikh moved swiftly, opening the door to reveal a young courier, eyes wide but determined. Clutching a folded letter, edged with the royal emblem, a seal never broken, except in records of emergencies. He tore the letter open, scanning the lines with growing alarm. His eyes darkened, shadowed with storm clouds. "They know of us, the pendant, your lineage, everything," he murmured, "and they've sent a decree. The council demands your immediate apprehension." The maid's breath hitched. The fragile alliance they had forged now trembled on the edge of collapse. "Then we must act," she said, the veneer of calm replaced by fierce determination. "Before the Empire's wolves close in." The Sheikh's hand found hers, the touch brief but searing. "We will face this enemy together," he vowed, "not as master and servant, but as allies bound by fire and blood." The chamber seemed to hold its breath, the golden light flickering, as if bracing for the war to come. Outside, the desert howled, endless, merciless, unyielding. Inside, two hearts beat in defiance of fate. Then, through the cracked window, a shadow fell upon the marble floor, a silhouette unknown, watching, waiting, and in that instant, the Sheikh's breath caught in his chest as the whispered words of a spy hidden nearby reached his ears. "The house of Al-Zahra's secret lives, but the danger begins when their past refuses to stay buried." The door slammed shut behind the courier, and the room plunged into a darkness, deeper than the desert night. A darkness where trust and betrayal entwined in a dance as old as the sands themselves. The silence that followed the courier's abrupt departure clung to the chamber like a thick veil. The opulence faded into shadows, the golden light flickering uncertainly as if afraid to witness what was yet to unravel. The billionaire sheikh stood by the window, his silhouette etched against the vast desert night. His gaze pierced through the darkness, searching for answers that had suddenly become far more elusive. The woman, no longer merely a maid, remained standing, her slender hand still clutching the warm cup of tea, now cooled into quiet resignation. Her eyes, fierce and unwavering moments ago, now shimmered with the weight of a storm gathering within. Their destinies, once separate, had become irrevocably entangled under the threat of a past the Empire fought desperately to forget. The Sheikh's voice broke the silence, low and rough, threading through the space between them. "They've sealed your fate. The Council's decree leaves no room for mercy. What do we do now?" She met his gaze steadily, a flicker of defiance lighting her features. "We fight, not with swords or armies, but with the truth that bleeds beneath their lies." Her voice held a tremor, but it was wrapped in iron resolve. His jaw clenched, the tension coiling deep within his chest. He roared silent protests at the crown weighing down his head, the legacy he had built on fortress walls of gold and fear. Yet here, in this moment, it threatened to crumble before a woman who wielded secrets sharper than any blade. He stepped away from the window, pacing like a caged lion trapped by invisible bars. The scent of oud lingered, teased by a faint breeze slipping through the heavy curtains. Every corner of the chamber seemed to hold its breath. "Your presence is a threat," he admitted, voice tight. "Not just to the council, but to this very palace. They fear what you represent. the return of a ghost bound to their deepest fears. She lowered her eyes, shadows crossing her face. I am their reckoning. The weight between them thickened, unspoken histories pressing against ancient judgments. Suddenly, she crossed the room with elegant determination, settling near the ornate divan draped with silks that bore the crest of his dynasty. I will not hide any more, she said softly. I am tired of walking in shadows, silenced by fear. Her hands trembled, betraying the quiet strength she projected. The Sheikh's gaze softened for a heartbeat, an echo of vulnerability muffled beneath layers of power. And I, he confessed, am tired of living behind walls of gold and lies. Their eyes locked, the frailty of truth flashing between them like a fragile flame in the desert wind. The gulf of their stations narrowed as anticipation blossomed amidst the tension. Suddenly, the palace door burst open, the heavy wood creaking under forceful hands. 2 guards entered, their faces masked in stern resolve. The air shifted, danger knocking at the gates, real and present. Your Highness, announced the captain, bowing with formality that barely hid urgency. The council has dispatched an enforcer. They come to seize the woman, the one bearing the House of Al-Zahra's sigil. The Sheikh's eyes darkened to pools of storm. Then they will find us ready. Turning swiftly, he gestured for the woman to follow. There is a hidden passage beneath the east wing. It leads beyond the palace walls, past the dunes. She hesitated, the faintest flicker of doubt crossing her features. But the determination quickly reclaimed her visage. I will not run forever, she said. But if we must fight another day, then I will stand beside you. Together, they moved through the labyrinthine halls, their footsteps soft against marble floors, echoing with centuries of secrets. The passage bloomed from darkness into the cool embrace of earth beneath the palace, a forgotten refuge for those who dared defy fate. The moment their bodies disappeared from the palace's golden grasp, the first cracks of dawn whispered over the desert horizon, painting the sky with bruised hues of purple and rose. Outside, the desert stretched limitless and indifferent. Yet beneath its vast canopy, a battle for legacies and hearts had begun to rage. As they emerged from the secret tunnel, the woman glanced up at her companion, eyes searching the hard lines of his face. Do you truly believe we can change what history has already written? She asked, voice barely above a breath. He looked toward the rising sun, the first light casting long shadows behind them. History is written by survivors, he said, and together we will rewrite every line. Her breath caught, hope and fear mingling in her chest. But as they stepped forward, a figure watched from the dunes, a silhouette cloaked in secrecy, eyes gleaming with shadowed intent. A whisper reached the Sheikh's ears, carried by the desert wind as the sands shifted around them. The House of Al-Zahra lives on, but the war for its soul has only just begun. The woman's grip tightened on the pendant beneath her cloak, her heart pounding in sync with the unyielding desert. Behind them, the palace's golden towers seemed to tremble under the weight of impending upheaval. And in that fragile, charged silence, the line between predator and prey blurred, leaving only the promise of a storm that would consume them all. The desert wind howled like a distant lament, sweeping across the endless dunes as if carrying the whispers of forgotten legacies. Beneath the rising sun's pale glow, the hidden passage beneath the east wing breathed a cool, ancient breath. The Billionaire Sheikh's steps were measured. A fortress of resolve, forged in the crucible of countless battles, both political and personal. Beside him, the woman who was no longer merely a servant carried the weight of her past as fiercely as the pendant nestled against her heart. Her gaze was steady, burning with the restless fury of a soul denied freedom for far too long. Yet, beneath that fierce exterior lay a well of fragile hope, an ember flickering in the face of overwhelming darkness. "We move fast," the sheikh murmured, his voice low but laced with bitter irony. "The council wasted no time in sending their enforcers. They believe the exile of your house ends with your capture." She turned toward him, eyes narrowing like desert stars sharpened on a winter's night. "They don't understand what they're dealing with. The house of Al-Zahra was broken but never defeated. What they fear is the truth, the power that legacy carries." The narrow tunnel seemed to close around them, ancient stone walls haunted by the echoes of secrets and shadows. Each step deeper into the darkness was a defiance, a rejection of the gilded cage they had escaped. The sheikh halted suddenly, silence pressing before him like a desert storm. "Tell me everything. I need to know who you are, beyond the names and the emblem." She exhaled slowly, then began, a story woven with pain, betrayal, and iron-willed survival. "My family was once the heart of this land's nobility, rulers of vast lands and guardians of ancient knowledge. But the council betrayed us, branding us traitors to protect their fragile reign. We were cast into oblivion, stripped of our titles, our homes, and our voices." Her fingers brushed the pendant unconsciously, as if drawing strength from its cold metal. "I survived by hiding in plain sight, a maid, a shadow in these halls, but my silence carried the weight of a promise to return and reclaim what was stolen." The sheikh's jaw tightened, the truth piercing through his carefully constructed world. The certainty of power, the illusion of control, each shattered by the woman standing before him. "You risk everything," he whispered, "not only your life, but the stability of the empire itself." Her eyes flared with unyielding defiance. "Some things are worth the risk. Freedom, justice, truth." Between them the air thickened, charged with the unspoken recognition that their fates were entwined, like threads in a tapestry too complex to unravel. Suddenly, the faintest sound reached their ears, a soft, almost imperceptible footstep echoing somewhere beyond the tunnel. Their bodies tensed, instincts sharpened by years of treachery. "It's too soon," the sheikh said grimly. "They're coming." She gave a curt nod, steeling herself. "We cannot hide forever. The palace's shadows have eyes everywhere." They pressed forward, emerging into a desolate courtyard, bathed in the pale light of dawn. The scent of earth and dry grass mingled with the faint traces of jasmine carried on the breeze. The expanse was terrifying, an open field where a single misstep could mean capture. The Sheikh's gaze swept the horizon, calculating, restless. "They'll come at dawn," he said. "But we have allies within the palace, those still loyal to justice, or at least to me." His voice was heavy with the unspoken burden of command. She studied him closely, seeing the wariness beneath the facade of strength. "And what about you? What do you truly want in all this?" His eyes darkened, shadowed by storms unspoken. "To protect what remains of my kingdom, and if it means standing beside you, an exile reborn, then so be it." A fragile silence blossomed between them, carrying the weight of promises whispered without words. The sudden crack of branches broke the fragile peace. Both spun toward the sound. A figure emerged from the shadows. A young man, face grim and eyes hard, clutching a folded parchment. "The emissary sent new orders," he reported breathlessly. "The council has declared you both enemies of the state. They've dispatched a battalion. Time is against us." The Sheikh's fist clenched, knuckles whitening. "Then we leave no room for mercy." Turning to the woman, a flicker of rare vulnerability broke through his mask. "Are you ready to face the storm that follows?" Her nod was steady, rooted in a resolve born of fire and loss. "I am no longer the shadow you knew. I am the storm they cannot escape." Together they vanished into the shifting dunes, the unrelenting desert swallowing their footsteps, but not their defiance. The palace behind them awakened, its silent halls stirring with whispers of conspiracy and the deadly dance for power. And in the gathering heat of morning, as the sun ignited the horizon, a pair of cold eyes watched from the highest tower. Eyes that held not only dread, but a cruel certainty. "The house of Al-Zahra is rising again," the unseen observer whispered, voice like the sharp edge of a blade. "And the game is far from over." A faint tremor rippled through the desert sands, as if the earth itself braced for the collision of legacies, love, and betrayal yet to come. The desert air thickened as dawn's first light seeped timidly into the hidden courtyard, where the billionaire sheikh and the woman who bore the weight of the house of Al-Zahra's lost legacy now stood. The silent horizon stretched endlessly, mirroring the uncertain path that unfurled before them. Two figures, bound by fate, love, and mounting danger. The sheikh's gaze hovered on the horizon, sharp yet burdened. His kingdom, his golden throne, was no longer a symbol of absolute power, but a fragile construct threatened by whispers and shadows. In the cool light, the ornate rings on his fingers seemed trivial against the magnitude of the storm gathering around. Them both. She watched him, the faintest crease between her brows betraying the tension beneath her composed exterior. "What will you do next?" she asked, her voice low, hesitant yet resolute. He turned slowly, eyes dark pools reflecting the desert's harsh reality. "We cannot face the council's wrath with mere defiance. We need allies, those who remember justice, who still believe in something beyond fear and tradition." Her grip tightened on the pendant nestled beneath her cloak, the ancient symbol of survival and rebellion. "There are still those who remember my family's name," she said, voice edged with potent hope. "Old friends, hidden in the shadows, waiting for the day the house of Al-Zahra might rise again." He nodded, a slow spark igniting in his chest, a rare flicker of hope cutting through the endless night of his soul. Then we gather them, quietly. We build a rebellion not of swords, but of truth and courage. A sudden breeze swirled, carrying the scent of jasmine and hot sand, wrapping around them like a fragile promise made under a sky heavy with secrets. The delicate threads connecting their fates pulled taut, vibrating with the weight of unspoken desires and the fierce urgency of survival. She studied his face, the sharp jawline, the storm-dark eyes, the subtle lines carved by battles both external and within. Behind that veneer of unyielding authority, she sensed a man fractured, yearning for something lost beneath the gilded mask. Connection, redemption, perhaps even love. Their shared history was woven with conflict, a dance of power and defiance. But beneath it lay a fragile thread, delicate and dangerous. "Do you truly trust me?" she whispered, stepping closer, her breath mingling with his in the cooling morning air. His eyes burned with an intensity that silenced the desert winds. "I trust what you represent, a future neither of us can shape alone." Their hands brushed briefly, but the simple contact sent ripples through the charged space between them. The gulf of rank and past wrongs seemed to waver, if only for a heartbeat, before the inevitable return of reality's harsh demands. A distant sound shattered the fragile moment, the crunch of footsteps on sand. Both froze, shadows sharpening in their eyes, muscles coiling like predators sensing a hunt. From behind a crumbling stone archway emerged a figure cloaked in the unmistakable dark garb of the council's enforcers. His gaze was cold, merciless, a living reminder of the Empire's ruthless machinery. "Your time is up," the man announced, voice void of mercy. "You carry a legacy the Council will not tolerate. Surrender now, or be broken." The Sheikh stepped protectively in front of her, the weight of rulership settling on broad shoulders once more. "No empire is unbreakable," he said, voice steady but fierce, "and no decree can unmake what history refuses to bury." The woman's eyes flashed defiance. "We are not prisoners of the past. We are the storm that reshapes the future." The enforcer sneered, raising a hand to signal his soldiers hidden just beyond the dunes. In that instant, the desert erupted, not with the quiet serenity it traditionally held, but with the roar of a war ignited. The Sheikh's mind raced, his options narrowed like the unforgiving canyon walls. Yet, amid the looming chaos, something deeper stirred, a profound shift within the man who had once ruled with unyielding iron will. He caught her gaze and saw not a frightened servant, but an equal, a partner in a battle both political and personal. A woman whose very presence challenged the core of his identity. He reached for her hand, this time with no hesitation. "We fight together," he vowed, voice a low promise woven with fire. "Not as master and servant, but as allies bound by fate's cruel design." Her fingers entwined with his, solid and sure, a pact forged in the dying light before dawn fully crowned the day. Around them, the palace and its gilded halls seemed a distant memory, replaced by the raw vastness of the desert that had witnessed centuries of rise and fall. As the enforcer signaled, "An advance," the sheikh drew a breath, sharp with determination. "Let them come," he growled. "We will burn their shadows away." A sudden, cold whisper slithered through the dunes like a serpent's hiss, unseen but heard by those attuned to the high stakes of power and betrayal. "The house of Al-Zara lives," the voice breathed, "and with it, the reckoning that will unseat empires." The woman's grip on the pendant tightened, heart thunderous against the cage of silence. The sheikh's eyes flicked into the distance, where the first ranks of soldiers emerged as ghosts from the desert heat. Between the two, an unspoken truth pulsed, a fierce hope mingled with the storm's inevitability. And in that fragile, luminous moment before chaos erupted, the sheikh realized the greatest battle was yet to come, not only for the kingdom, but for the woman who had undone the loneliness of his empire and awakened the guarded depths of his heart. But as the sun's first finger of fire kissed the dunes, a shadow detached itself from the advancing host, a figure, neither ally nor enemy, but something far more dangerous. The desert still held its breath, and so did they. The attack came at dawn. Swift and merciless, the desert's quiet shattered by the thunderous approach of armored horses, cutting across the dunes like a storm unleashed. The sheikh's sharp command rang out as he pushed the woman behind him, his broad shoulders a fortress against the onslaught. The pungent scent of dust and sweat mixed with the distant wail of war horns, a cruel reminder that their sanctuary was fleeting. They darted between ancient stones, the rising sun casting long shadows that seemed to claw at their heels. Her hand gripped the pendant beneath her cloak, a steady pulse echoing through the cold metal, a heartbeat that tethered her to her shattered past and uncertain future. "Stay close," he breathed, voice thick with urgency and something deeper, an unspoken plea clothed in authority. Their breaths mingled in the desert air, hot and ragged, yet the space between them tightened with a fragile intimacy. Behind them, the council's enforcers surged forward, relentless as the tide. The sheikh's eyes burned with fury and calculation. Every instinct, honed by power and loss, screamed for survival. Yet beneath it lay a fragile vulnerability, one no crown had ever truly concealed. "Why do they chase you so fiercely?" he demanded between clenched teeth, dodging a spear thrust, barely missing his side. She met his gaze defiant and haunted. "Because I carry what they fear, the truth they buried under lies, the legacy they hoped to erase." Their escape led them toward the outer cliffs, where the jagged rocks plunged into the abyss below. A treacherous path, but their only chance. A misstep meant death, betrayal meant capture. The desert held its breath with them. The sheikh's hand found hers, fingers tightening in a grip that spoke of protection and an emerging closeness, forged in crucible fire. "Together," he vowed, his voice low yet resolute. The sudden crack of a bowstring shattered the charged silence. An arrow hissed through the air, embedding itself inches from their feet. They froze, heartbeats pounding in a synchronized drum of fate. From behind a cluster of rocks, a figure emerged, the unmistakable silhouette of a lone assassin, cloaked in midnight black. cold eyes locked on to the Sheikh's, unwavering and merciless. "You will fall this day, Sheikh," the assassin whispered, a blade gleaming in the morning light. The Sheikh stepped forward with a fierce snarl, muscles coiled like a desert cat ready to strike. But the woman shifted beside him, her voice steady despite the storm raging in her chest. "Wait!" The assassin faltered, confusion flickering. She reached out slowly, revealing a small, ancient seal, stamped with the same emblem etched into her pendant. "They sent me," she said softly, voice heavy with bitter regret, "to stop what threatens the Empire's fragile peace." Shock split the Sheikh's features, a betrayal wrapped in shadows. "Why?" he demanded, eyes searching the unreadable mask before him. The assassin's gaze flickered. Pain and loyalty conflicted in that brief moment. "Because some secrets," she replied, voice breaking, "are meant to remain buried, even if it destroys us all." Before the Sheikh could react, the assassin lunged. A brutal clash followed, steel singing against steel, sparks raining beneath the oppressive sun. The woman moved with unexpected grace, throwing herself into the fray beside the Sheikh. Their movements, a deadly ballet of trust and desperation. In the chaos, a whispered word escaped her lips, a vow carried on the wind. "We forgive, but we never forget." The battle's fury bore down, relentless and primal, until the assassin fell, wounded but alive, collapsed at their feet. Breathless, the Sheikh knelt beside her, eyes fierce and conflicted. "We spared you, for now," he said, voice rough with unguarded feeling. "But the cracks in this empire run deeper than daggers." She nodded, pain and defiance mingling in her glance. "I am not your enemy," she murmured. "I am a prisoner of the truths you refuse to face." The woman watched them, eyes reflecting the first light of hope rising with the sun. Behind them the dunes whispered of secrets stirred, of battles looming on unseen horizons. The Sheikh pulled her close, the chaos momentarily forgotten, in the heated clasp of hands and racing hearts. "Tell me," he rasped, "what comes next?" Her silence was heavy with untold promises, yet her grip on the pendant tightened. Before she could answer, a chilling voice echoed through the early morning air. "Your kingdom falters, Sheikh. The storm has only just begun." From the ridge above, a dark figure stepped forward, cloaked in shadows deeper than the pre-dawn night. The woman's eyes widened, a silent recognition flashing like lightning. The Sheikh's jaw clenched, his gaze hardening into steel. The war for the House of Al-Zahra was no longer a whispered threat. It was a raging tempest at their gates, and as the desert winds howled around them, swallowing the fragile calm, the Sheikh realized, with a pain that cut deeper than any blade, the greatest betrayal awaited not in the enemy's claws, but within the palace walls themselves. The desert's early light struggled through the brittle morning haze, as the billionaire Sheikh and the woman formerly hidden beneath servitude stepped beyond the shadows of the palace walls. Their breaths were sharp, mingled with the desert's dry whisper, hearts pounding in tandem to the rhythm of encroaching danger. The wide expanse before them was no refuge, only a vast expanse of unyielding sand and jagged rocks, where the slightest mistake meant ruin. He watched her closely, the pendant glinting faintly through the folds of her dark cloak, a beacon both of her heritage and the storm that threatened to consume them all. For a moment, the desert seemed to hold its breath, as if sensing the fragile alliance struck between two unlikely allies standing against the weight of their intertwined fates. "We cannot outrun them forever," he murmured, voices barely carrying over the whispering wind. "The Council's enforcers are relentless, trained in shadows longer than either of us have lived." Her eyes met his, fierce and unyielding, despite the exhaustion trailing at her edges. "They think silencing me will bury the truth. They don't know I am more than a shadow cast by their lies." They moved silently toward a narrow pass between earlier ruins, remnants of an empire older than even the Sheikh's own lineage. The stones, cracked by time and the scouring desert winds, bore witness to battles long past. Yet none weighed as heavily as the one they now faced, one carved from betrayal, unspoken promises, and forbidden legacies. He kept glancing over his shoulder, the muscles in his jaw tightening. The weight of a kingdom's expectations settled like armor, a gilded, suffocating cage. Yet beneath the sheen of absolute authority, a fragile vulnerability flashed whenever his gaze locked with hers, unspoken and profound. "Why do you hide behind that stoic mask?" she challenged softly, her voice barely above the rustling sand. "You carry as much prison on your shoulders as I do." He exhaled slowly, the desert breeze teasing the strands of his dark hair. "Control, the illusion that keeps my world from unraveling. But every day I wonder if the walls of gold only trap me deeper." She startled him then, stepping closer, the heat between them a subtle defiance of the dangerous world watching their every move. "Then let us shatter those walls," she whispered, her breath warm against the cold edge of dawn. "Together or fall trying." Before he could respond, a harsh clatter broke the moment's fragile intimacy, the distant echo of hooves thundering against stone and sand. "Too late," the Sheikh growled. "They've found us." They darted like shadows against the rising sun, weaving through ancient archways and crumbling staircases. His grip on her hand was unyielding. Her faith in him was a fragile flame, illuminating the darkness they fled. Suddenly, a sharp command sliced through the clamorous chase, a voice, cold and merciless, belonging to the enforcer from the council, who stepped into view with a squadron of grim-faced guards. "You cannot hide behind noble lies any longer," the enforcer spat, eyes hardened with finality. "Surrender the woman, and the Empire's mercy may yet spare your life." The Sheikh's laugh was a bitter, broken thing. "Mercy is a word for the weak. I am not afraid to burn the foundations if it saves what remains." The woman squared her shoulders, the pendant beating against her chest like a war drum. "I am no prisoner to relinquish." Steel flashed, a deadly dance that seethed with desperation and raw fury erupted between the forces. The Sheikh moved with lethal precision, every step a battle-hardened calculation, his blows protecting not only his life, but the fragile truth embodied by the woman at his side. Their breath mingled in the sweat-drenched heat, hearts racing as close as their bodies. the line between protector and beloved blurred with every exchanged glance. The desert around them pulsed like a living thing, hostile yet sacred, a witness to a conflict etched deep in blood and legacy. Suddenly, the woman faltered under a blow, pain flashing through her features, but the sheikh held her, eyes blazing with a fire that had dulled beneath lifetimes of power. "Not yet," he breathed, voice rough. "Not while I draw breath." The stray arrow whistled, a deadly kiss that barely missed them. The assassin's shadow returned, silent and cruel, blade poised for a fatal strike. Without hesitation, she stepped forward, voice sharp and steady. "Wait!" A small relic appeared, an ancient seal matching her pendant. The assassin's eyes locked with hers, conflict writ large in the cold depths, before the blade lowered, halted by the weight of secrets heavier than steel. The battlefield stilled, tension thick as desert heat, the fragile moment bleeding into a charged standstill. "You carry a curse wrapped in hope," the assassin whispered, voice cracked yet resolute. "But some truths bind us all, whether chains or wings." The sheikh's glare was volcanic, flicking between old enemies and uncertain allies. "Then we decide what freedom means, together or not at all." As the assassin vanished into the sands, a chilling breeze stirred, whispering warnings no one wished to hear. The woman's grip tightened on the pendant as she met the sheikh's gaze. This war is not only about throne or bloodlines, but about the heart that dares to defy fate itself. He nodded slowly, the fortress around his soul beginning to crack, a flicker of something unspoken igniting between them. Trust, perhaps even hope. Behind them, the palace's golden spires shimmered in the morning light, a fragile illusion of power, overshadowed by the gathering storm. And as the desert wind carried the distant howl of enemies closing in, the sheikh realized the truth carved deep beneath his pride. The enemy was no longer just outside these walls, but woven inside the very fabric of his kingdom. And the woman beside him held the only key to survival. At that instant, amid the swirling sands, a shadow detached itself from the dunes, silent, watching, with eyes that gleamed like cold fire. The desert held its breath again, and so did the fate of the billionaire sheikh and the woman who had become his reckoning. The first light of dawn stretched across the desert horizon, bathing the rugged landscape in a tender glow that promised renewal. The billionaire sheikh stood atop a rocky outcrop, his silhouette framed against the awakening sky. Beside him, the woman whose past bore the weight of a lost legacy, no longer a mere maid, but a force reborn, drew a steady breath. Their eyes met, reflecting a shared resolve, hardened by trials and softened by the fragile blooming of trust. Behind them, the palace's golden towers loomed distant and silent, symbols of a dominion shaken to its core, but not yet broken. Outside the walls, the oppressive shadow of the council's wrath hovered like a gathering storm. Yet within these moments, a fragile calm took root, a pause before the inevitable reckoning. The sheikh's gaze softened, abandoning its usual cold edge. "Whatever comes next," he said quietly, "we face it together." She nodded, the once furtive flame in her eyes now blazing unabated. not as servant and master, but as equals bound by fate and fire. Their hands met again, the contact brief but charged, stitching together the fissures carved by deception and ancient grudges. The air around them was heavy with the scent of jasmine and desert earth, reminders of roots both old and new, intertwining destinies and the uneasy hope of redemption. It was here, away from gilded halls and whispered intrigues, that the true battle had begun, not just for power, but for the freedom to love and to redefine their worlds. In the depths of the desert, far from prying eyes, allies gathered, loyalists moved by the whisper of justice, souls long buried in silence, ready to rise. The woman's words echoed softly between them. The house of Al-Zahra's spirit never died. It waited for the moment to reclaim the light. Across hidden camps, messages fluttered like desert hawks, rallying forces, not just of blood, but of conviction. The Sheikh's leadership, once marked by unyielding authority, softened into inspiration, a beacon calling for unity against the looming darkness. Returning to the valley below, they found themselves surrounded, not by enemies, but by faces alight with hope and fierce determination. Old friends emerged from shadowed corners, bearing scars and stories that spoke of resilience. Among them were those who remembered the truth of the House of Al-Zahra and who believed in the promise now embodied by this unlikely pair. The council's enforcers might wield cold decrees and weapons sharpened by fear, but this new alliance held something far stronger, the weight of justice and the power of love that had endured countless betrayals. That evening, as the sun dipped beneath the dunes in a blaze of molten gold, the Sheikh and the woman stood beneath a canopy of stars. The pendant, no longer hidden, gleamed against her chest, a symbol transformed from secret to emblem of hope. He took her hand, his voice low and sincere. "Your courage has undone walls I never dared to tear down. With you, I am not just a ruler. I am a man freed." She smiled, a quiet strength radiating from her. "And with you, I have found a home, not in halls of power, but in a heart that dared to break the chains of the past." The palace doors, once closed in suspicion and scorn, now swung open for a future reimagined. The council's grip loosened as their whispers of revolt gained voice in the songs of a people ready for change. Through the following days, hope flourished like desert blooms after rare rains. Old wounds began to heal as justice was restored, not through vengeance, but through understanding and reconciliation. The House of Al-Zahra's name was reclaimed, not as a ... curse, but as a testament to endurance. In the quiet moments shared between them, the Sheikh and the woman let go of fears and scars, choosing instead to kindle a love forged in the crucible of betrayal and survival. They dreamed aloud of a life beyond titles and secrets, a life of simple joys and shared dreams, their hearts synchronized like the endless desert stars. One morning, beneath the open sky, in a small sunlit garden blooming with vibrant flowers, they pledged themselves fully, not as ruler and subject, but as partners in life's fragile dance. The ceremony was modest but radiant, a celebration of love that transcended bloodlines and power. Surrounded by those who had stood unwavering, their vows echoed lightly on the desert breeze, carrying promises shaped by sacrifice, forgiveness, and hope. As they embraced, the golden light wrapped them in warmth, painting a future where darkness could not endure. Their journey, marked by storms and secrets, had reached its end, a new chapter opening where love was sovereign and freedom abundant. Far away, in the silent watchtowers of the empire, eyes that once gleamed with cruelty softened, witnessing the dawn of a kingdom reborn. In that moment of peace, the Sheikh's heart, once encased in ice and commands, blossomed at last. For he had discovered that true power lay not in the crowns worn or thrones held, but in the courage to surrender to a love that could heal even the deepest scars. And as the desert winds whispered gently through the flowering palms, the future unfolded. A promise of endless tomorrows, written hand in hand beneath the boundless sky.